Hey everyone, my name is Dwyane Williams. I'm Director of Community Engagement for Mobilizing Our Brothers Initiative, or MOBI. Today I'm sitting with Donja Love to talk about his new play 1 and 2, which will be running at the Pershing Square Signature Theater here in New York City until January 12th, 2020. So, Donja,
Hey.
hey. Today we're going to be talking about your work, visibility in theater, and a little bit about what got you started in this, as well as your decision to really educate using theater. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, 1 and 2, and where it was sort of born from?
Yeah, and so I am Donja Love. I am a black, queer, HIV positive writer. And that's a very unique intersection to exist on. As I get older, I learned that that's a very beautiful intersection to exist on. I find it to be a very beautiful intersection to exist on because you get to see the world through a point of view that in a way kind of forces you to become a softer person, that forces you to really get down to the nitty-gritty and to the truth of like who you are, what you stand for, and how you take up space in the world and how you don't take up space in the world. And so I say all that to say that's one of the reasons, and that's how my play 1 and 2 came to be. Being a black, queer, HIV positive person myself, I found myself quite often feeling like we as black, queer, HIV positive people are forgotten about, where we often aren't cared about at all, if we even are thought about. And what can I do? How can I use my gifts to say, hey, you actually do matter. You aren't invisible, and you deserve to take up space, and space is carved out for you in regards to a play like this. And so like all of those things kind of just constantly go through my mind, and it came to be with 1 and 2.
So you talked a little bit about your lived experience as a person living with HIV. Was that what inspired you or triggered you to write this piece, or was there any pivotal moments that really sort of inspired this?
Yes and yes,
Yes.
to all of it.
Okay.
I started writing 1 and 2 the end of last year.
Okay.
I was diagnosed as HIV positive December 13th, 2008. And so last year I was approaching the 10th anniversary, and I actually thought that I would be in a victorious space. I thought as I was approaching the 10th anniversary that I would be in a space where I would have full control over this moment, and I didn't. I found myself becoming depressed again. I found myself experiencing suicidal ideations, which I have in the past, and it honestly blew my mind because I didn't think that I would be in this space. I did work prior to the 10th anniversary of my diagnosis. I did work of navigating through the shame I felt. I did work of navigating through the stigma that society places on me. And so once I was approaching this 10th year marker, I was like, why am I depressed right now? What is going on? And one thing that I know is writing. And I started to write what my experience was like the past 10 years of being positive. And after I finished writing the play, I actually wrote it on my phone because I was too depressed to get out of bed. My laptop was on my desk, which I had to get out of bed to get, but the one thing that is always next to me is my phone. So I grabbed my phone, I opened up the notes app, and I started to write this play. And after I finished writing the play, I said, oh, hell no. I'm not letting anybody read this. This is way too personal. I don't want for anybody to see these ugly, dark moments that I've been through, and some that I'm still going through. So I left the play alone. And then we fast forward to a few weeks after that, a friend reached out to me, and they told me about this young man who was recently diagnosed. And they asked could I meet this young man because he wasn't taking his diagnosis well. He wasn't taking his meds. He was drinking heavily, and he it would be beneficial for me to talk to somebody who has also gone through a similar journey. So I said, absolutely. That same night, this young man and I met, and I found myself blown away because we had so many moments that were similar to each other. And after this young man and I parted ways, I kept thinking about that play that was on my phone. And I told myself, oh, this is not about you anymore. Like, this may be your story, but this story doesn't belong to just you. And in that moment, I said, oh, I would love if I could be able to gift this to my community to help heal.
It's really interesting. So your experience with the young man really sort of gave you the courage to sort of propel and really put this out there.
Absolutely, because I think I would have kept it to myself if it wasn't for that interaction that we had.
Yeah, you. I read in one of your narratives that you wrote. You referred to this as a hidden state of emergency, which was interesting to me. Can you talk a little bit about why you refer to it as such, and what are some of the challenges that that really the ingredients and the challenges that make this sort of state of emergency, hidden state of emergency?
Yeah. It is a hidden state of emergency, and I'm gonna just keep it all the way real.
Please, by all means.
It's a hidden state of emergency because it's Black and queer people.
Okay.
It's individuals who are already existing on this intersection where, again, folks don't think that we matter. Not just our stories, but folks don't think that we matter at all. And so you have this intersection, and now you add HIV into the equation. Individuals really don't know that this is going on. The amount of people who I talk to about 1 in 2 Black, gay, or bisexual men will be diagnosed with HIV in their lifetime. The amount of people that say, oh wow, I never knew that. It blows my mind. And so that's why for me this is such a hidden state of emergency, because that means half of Black, queer men will be diagnosed with HIV in their lifetime, and people do not know about it. Like, do not know about it whatsoever. And so for me, that's why this is a hidden state of emergency. And I feel confident in saying that if this statistic existed for white queer folks, it would be all over. People would talk about it. Things will be done. But because these are multiple marginalized identities, people don't know about it. And if they do, they really don't think twice about it. So that's why for me, it feels like it truly is a hidden state of emergency. And I've been blessed with the gift of writing, and I've also been blessed with resources and knowing people that can help make things happen. So I said, why don't I not just write a story that I'm using my imagination to create, but how about I use something very personal? How about I take what my experience has been like to be able to point arrows at this thing going on so that it's no longer this hidden state of emergency, where it's this thing where people say, hey, I didn't know this was happening, but now I do, so let me do something.
I've been working in this sort of arena of work in public health and community engagement for about 10 years now. And I remember when I learned of the statistic. And so for those who don't know, the statistic really refers to the CDC released a statistic that said that 1 in 2 gay men would be diagnosed HIV positive. So this sort of lifetime risk statistic that we're referring to, it really hit hard for people in my work, those that worked in this field. But you as a playwright and as a man living with HIV, can you walk through some of the sort of emotions and sort of feelings that you felt when you learned of this?
And it was full gamut of emotions. One of the things when I was first diagnosed, and like I said, I remember I was diagnosed December 13th, so it was about 2 weeks before Christmas. I was 22 at the time, and it was a rapid oral test. And so right afterward, they have to do a blood test just to make sure that it wasn't a false positive. And it took 2 weeks for that result to come back. And when I went in, it was December 23rd. So what is that, 2 days before Christmas? And I kept saying that if I get that I am actually not HIV positive, that it was a false positive, I will know that God is real. Yeah. And that didn't happen. And I started to question if there really is this infinite being out there. And if so, does this infinite being care about me? And so that was also a part of my journey of being this spiritual individual at the time. I found myself losing faith in humanity. I found myself losing faith in myself. I navigated through denial. I navigated through a lot of shame. I navigated through the stigma that like people place on me. And there, I remember, and it was, I know it came from such a place of love, but it was also such a place of stigma where I remember my dad told me, don't say anything to anybody about this because people aren't kind at all. And like, I just like that stuck to me in such a way where I didn't even talk to myself about it. I lost sex drive. I didn't want to do anything at all that reminded me that I am someone who is HIV positive. So all of those things went through my mind. I navigated through all of these things in a very spiritual way. And like I said, I was diagnosed December 13th of 2008. It took me until December of 2016, 8 years later, to get to a point to publicly talk about it. Like people close to me I would share, and that was such a small group of people, but I was able to 8 years later get to a point of saying, hey, I can be HIV positive, and I can scream it on a mountaintop that I'm HIV positive, and I still deserve love. I still deserve all of these things that anyone else in the world deserves, but it took 8 years to get to that point because I had to navigate through stigma, I had to navigate through shame, through guilt, through fear, through all of these things.
Well, I appreciate the emotions, and I've seen the play. Actually, tonight will be my third time experiencing the play. Yeah. So at this point, you know, I'm basically a part of the cast. You know, like
through. Yes, you are.
But like each time, I'm overwhelmed by how much emotion, how many different experiences I find myself triggered by, or how many. And so it seems like each time is something different. It's a different scene, and so there are really like all of these layers that really take place in the play, all of these emotions. So I just want to say, first, thank you so much for pouring your emotions into it, because it gets a chance for us to tap into some of those places that are extremely necessary a lot of times. We've made some really great advances as it relates to prevention and treatment over the years. I mean, we have U equals U, which is undetectable equals untransmittable. Treatment as prevention is a thing now. We even have like advanced technology where we can, or testing technology where we can get test results within 60 seconds or less, right? With all of those advances, do you think that that's enough? Or because this is your way of sort of making noise about this, right? Is there enough noise being made? What do you think?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think we are making progress, but absolutely not. People often ask me, what do I want? And like, what do I see happening? What I want, what I see happening rather, or what I would like to see happen, is us existing in a stigma-free world. Oftentimes people talk about like a cure, which I think would be amazing, which is absolutely beautiful for whenever that happens, but we aren't able to get to a cure until we get to a stigma-free world. I remember coming across an article that said in 2019, going on 2020, 28% of millennials are scared to hug someone who is HIV positive, which is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. And so I think about like how deeply rooted stigma is in our society. I remember sharing this with my cast when we entered the actual space that the play is being held. I was debating on if I was going to wear it for this or not, and I opted to wear the sweater instead. But I have a hoodie, and the hoodie says HIV Lives Matter. Once we entered into the space that the play is being held, I wore that hoodie every single day. For every single preview, I wore that hoodie. And inside the theater itself, That was a space that I worked really hard to cultivate to be a safe space.
Yeah.
So I felt safe in that space. Once I left the theater to go into like the lobby, just to go to the bathroom, the amount of people who looked at me, who looked at the sweater, and I saw their face. And how they felt so uncomfortable. I noticed people making sure that they got out of my way. Not knowing that I'm HIV positive or not, but seeing me wearing a sweater, a hoodie that says HIV Lives Matter, I imagined that they thought, oh, this person is HIV positive. I don't know what that will do to me, so let me just be safe by getting out of this person's way. So I say all that to say, as we were doing this play, I watched how people took me in, how they handled me. And how they made the decision not to be near me. And so when I talk about how deeply rooted stigma is in our society, I think for me that is one of the major things, one of the first things that we really need to do is eradicate stigma. Because in order for us to get to the cure, we need to be able to cure the world of stigma first and foremost.
That's true.
So that's the most important thing for me.
As you talk, there's a piece in the play that I won't go into because they need to go and see it.
Yes?
But there's a piece in the play that that really sort of touches on exactly what you just talked about, and it kind of hit me actually. Your play features a component of chance. What does this symbolization of chance mean to you, and can you tell us about what went into writing such a complex performance?
And so when I was writing this play, the very first thing for me was just honestly getting out of my depression. And I know like how therapeutic writing is for me, so I said just let me write everything I'm feeling right now, everything I felt, and hopefully that will help me navigate through this depression. And so that was the first thing. And then when I started to think about how quite literally anyone can contract HIV. There isn't a face, there isn't a name, there isn't a certain body type. Granted, the play talks about this very specific statistic of 1 in every 2 Black, gay, and bisexual man being diagnosed. At the same time, anyone can be diagnosed. So I found myself thinking, how can I best construct and craft a piece of work where any one of the actors on any performance can be in the track that is HIV positive. And I started to think about the audience, and I started to think about the audience representing the world, and I started to think about the stigma that exists in the world. So how can I, without the audience knowing what they're doing until we're deep into the play, realize, oh, I just picked this person to be HIV positive. And then what does that mean? And so for me, it felt like it was one of those moments, oftentimes in my work, craft means so much to me, structure means so much to me, but that one thing that I cannot control is the divine. And I always try to make room and space for the divine in my work. And so when I was writing this play, that was a moment when I realized, oh, this is the divine working right now. This is not like my degrees. This is not all of the teachings and learnings that I've gotten in playwriting. This is literally me making room for the divine to show up and to help me create a piece where any one of these actors on any given performance can have the track that is HIV positive.
It's really powerful to sit through that. You know, even knowing what will happen at the end, I'm still sort of like awestruck going through it, and just experiencing different feelings myself. I mean, guilt. You know, like you know, guilt about how I interacted and things of that nature, and also too just a lot of emotions in general. So again, thank you so much for that. I want to talk a little bit about visibility in theater because you are very committed to the fact that this space and who you're speaking to a lot of times in this, you're coming from the perspective of a Black, gay male, right? Jeremy L. Harris, who's the playwright for Slave Play, has been vocal about the lack of Black communities having access to theater, right? You've also expressed some similar sentiments in some of your narratives. What do you think is it that continues to be a barrier to Black communities to theater? Is it the audience or is it the stories?
I don't think it's the stories. I feel so blessed to exist in a time right now where we are seeing so many varied stories on stage, which I think 10 years ago, I think 5 years ago, I think even like 3 years ago, didn't exist in the way that it's existing right now, which I'm so blessed to be a part of right now. So I don't think it's the stories on stage. I think it is the people behind the scenes. Right. I've said this time and time again, and I will say it as much as I need to for it to change. I find myself walking into these theaters that are producing my work, that want to have a conversation with me, and I am the only one that looks like me. Yeah. And that is the problem. Mm-hmm. It's not just you producing work of very lived experiences, mm-hmm. It's you hiring people as well that honestly aren't just white people. Yeah. We need to see people that exist within multiple lived identities working at these theaters. And that doesn't look like an apprentice. Yeah. That doesn't look like a fellow. That doesn't look mm-hmm. like interns at all that will just be there for 9 months to a year, mm-hmm. then after that you're gone. It's someone who has the opportunity to exist within your theater space to truly make change, right? And they can be there longer than a year to see if these changes are actually being implemented. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, that is one of the most important things. So yes, being able to see plays on stage, written by, directed by, starring individuals of multiple lived experiences. Mm-hmm. And for me, what that means is not just white, right? And then also we need to be able to hire people. People need to work in these theaters who are not just white folks, mm-hmm. right? Who are not just straight folks, mm-hmm. who are not just cisgendered folks. We need to be able to see a very real world working in these theaters. And I think that is one of the most important things for me. That is, I see the people who are creating space with me as well, mm-hmm. Who also work really hard to make these things happen. And that's what's so important right now.
So how was 1 and 2 received? I mean, when I say 1 and 2, I don't just mean the play, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, even what you just shared about making sure that that we are visible and that we hold mm-hmm. space and we hold valuable space. How was that received coming into this?
So again, I'm going to keep it very
Please,
real.
By all means.
Be very honest. It took me a lot to get out of bed to come here. Yeah. It took me a lot to get out of bed to come here mm-hmm. because I am currently actively navigating through depression again. Yeah. I'm navigating through depression again because my seroversary, mm-hmm. which is when you found out when you were diagnosed with HIV, is always very triggering for me. Yeah. So that's one thing. And then on top of that, I created work where I am literally opening myself up for people to be able to see all of me. Yeah. Not just the good, but the bad, the ugly, all of these things. So that's another thing. And then also, I'm navigating through a depression because what I've been thinking about quite often as this play has been up on its feet is it truly feels like the world at large does not care about Black, queer, HIV positive people. Yeah. And I say that to say I've experienced and I'm still experiencing so much silence, mm-hmm. not so much surrounding the play, mm-hmm. but silence surrounding what the play is pointing arrows at, what the play is trying to highlight. And for me, that hurts so much mm-hmm. because the play is talking about this sobering statistic of 1 in every 2 Black, gay, and bisexual men will be diagnosed. So why is there so much silence? Yeah. I think about ACT UP's quote in their slogan of silence equals death. Mm-hmm. And we know now with all the advancements that were made, HIV is no longer a death sentence. Yeah. So what I think about when silence equals death, I think about silence equals stigma. Mm-hmm. I think about silence equals fear. Yeah. I think about silence equals 1 in every 2 will constantly be a statistic. Yeah. Because if you are, and this isn't a calling out, mm-hmm. This isn't even a calling in, this is me being very honest right now. This is me, someone who is Black, queer, HIV positive, saying that if you know that this statistic is happening, if you have a platform, if you are an influencer, you need to do something. Whatever that something is, your silence is not helping. What your silence is doing is adding to stigma. What your silence is doing is allowing this statistic to exist. And so for me, as I talk about the space that I'm in right now, I am in a depressed state, and I'm also in this very livid space as well of why is there so much silence? Not just about the play, because this is bigger than a play for me. This is about life. This is about existence. This is about representation. Why is there so much silence right now? And it boggles my mind because I cannot figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I do want to say that, again, as a patron and someone who's experienced it, I want to say that 1 and 2 is making great noise, good noise, just noise that is very much necessary. And my grandmother used to say, if that didn't move you, then you can't be moved. So, you know.
Come on, Grandma.
So look, I've been moved and moved time and time again. I want to ask you, before we close up, what is it that you really want people to take from this? I know what you just said was extremely powerful. Do something. But what else do you want people to really sort of take from this as a direct consequence of having experienced 1 and 2?
I would love well, I think it depends on who is the person that we're talking about, right? For me, it always boils down to I know who I'm writing about and I know who I'm writing for. So if you ask me, what do I want for Black, queer, HIV positive people to take away from this? I want for my people to take away that you matter, that someone cares about you, that I care about you, that so many other individuals care about you as well, and your story deserves to be told, and you deserve to live a beautiful life, a loving life, a soft life. So when I think about what do I want for my Black, queer, HIV positive people to take away, is that. What I want for individuals who do not exist on that very specific intersection, I would love for those individuals to take away that this statistic is happening right now. And it is up to you to do something. I am not of the belief that the individual that exists within the marginalized identities need to do the work. It's not our job to do the work at all. I quite honestly gifted you with an experience of what's going on.
That's powerful.
And so now it's up to you to do the work, to help us navigate through and get out of the statistic, to get beyond the stigma, and to get to a cure where I would absolutely love, and I don't think you hear a lot of playwrights say this, I would love if a theater would say, oh, this play is so outdated, we can't produce it. This play is so outdated, I'm not going to produce it. I would love if come next year this play will never get produced again, because 1 and 2 is not even in the stratosphere of existence. So that's what I hope can happen one day.
Yeah, for sure. Like, thank you so much for not just the gift, but for just being able to really just experiencing you, for being here today, for opening up yourself, not just through your art, but even in this space. I really appreciate it. Before we close out, can you please tell folks where to find you, and again, where to find 1 and 2?
Yes. You can be able to find 1 and 2 at the Pershing Square Signature Center. It's being presented through the new group. And 1 and 2 is running until January 12th, 2020. And you can go to thenewgroup.org to get your tickets. And the new group believes in this play so much and really wants to help activate change, where you have discounted tickets available. You can use the code MOBI, which is MOBI, to get $25 tickets. Or if you go to the theater 90 minutes before the show, you can get rush tickets, which are $10. So you have absolutely no reason to say I wasn't able to.
For sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. On a hug.
Yes, I love a hug. Yes, thank you so much.
I love you, brother. Thank you so much.
You.
Thank you so much to GLAAD. Thank you so much to MOBI. Thank you so much to Dwyane Love for being with us today. Again, we hope to see you at the Pershing Square Signature Theater running through January 12th. Thank you.